Well, the day we've been waiting for is finally here. The Sony A7R V has finally been announced, and well, for me at least, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Now, let me preface my opinion by first saying that I do think that this is a very high quality camera. I'm very impressed with it in a whole lot of ways. And if you are in the Sony system looking for a high resolution camera, well, it's gonna be probably your best option. Now, having said that, as someone who has followed all the rumors very closely and reported on the rumors multiple times, and for it to be kind of going back and forth between being a revolutionary camera or a very big step up to being kind of an incremental upgrade, I think it falls closer to the incremental upgrade, even though some of the specs are very impressive. Now, I'm not going to list all the specs and go into a lot of detail about it, but I will touch on some of the highlights. If you want to see a full spec breakdown, there's a whole lot of videos for that, and well, you could just go to B&H. And my opinion is kind of based upon other opinions that I've seen to a large degree because I haven't had the camera in my hands, but I can see the way the specs lay out and what I feel is a big upgrade and what I feel isn't. So first off, this does have a 61 megapixel sensor that is the exact same sensor that was in the Sony A7R IV. I'd say this is where probably my biggest disappointment is. Not because the 61 megapixel sensor that is in the A7R IV is bad. I mean, it was a very good sensor when it came out. It's a very good sensor now. That being said, we've been hearing rumors going back and forth about this being a brand new sensor. And I've kind of suspected that it would be a brand new sensor, especially when as soon as just a week ago, Sony Alpha rumors were saying they were like 90 to 95% sure that this was going to have a brand new type of sensor with greater light gathering possibilities. And I do know that that type of sensor does exist. It's a brand new type of stacked sensor that essentially allows you to double the light saturation. When Sony Alpha rumors was talking about this being a new sensor, well, I highly expected that that was going to be the case, but unfortunately, as the few days had passed, the percent went down to 30% and then like 5% chance. And well, today the announcement is it is the exact same sensor that was in the Sony A7R IV. With that said, this does have a much faster processor, and from what I've seen, this does have a slightly higher quality performance that they can get out of this sensor, especially in video and doing the 4K binning that it does in some of the video modes. But moving on to what I would say is probably the highlight of the camera, or at least what Sony would like you to think is the highlight of the camera, and that is the new AI processor chip that is in this camera that gives a new type of autofocusing to this camera. It allows you to track a whole array of different types of things like humans, animals, not just pets, all kinds of different animals. You have insects, airplanes, trains, vehicles, so a whole bunch of different things. It also supposedly gives you a better tracking of human detection as well, and supposedly uses deep learning to make sure that you're focusing on the right type of subject, and also can kind of give a bit of a prediction of what the pose is going to be. So this does sound really cool, and from the reviews I've seen, most people seem to think that it is a very worthwhile upgrade, at least over the Sony A7R IV. But I will say that this does look like something that Canon has kind of been doing for a while now, and I'm not saying that this isn't going to be a step up above Canon in a lot of different ways. It kind of feels very similar, and I think these companies have gotten really good at autofocusing in general, so the improvements are going to be incremental, and then maybe you'll look back a few generations and say, wow, look how much better my camera has gotten. But on a year-to-two basis, it doesn't look like it's getting that much of an improvement. Now, moving on to an improvement that I really do see, and something that I've been saying for a while, a lot of people can attest to that, is they did finally give a flip out and also tilt down camera, kind of like what Panasonic's been doing and kind of like what I've been hoping for a long time. And they did even improve upon Panasonic from what I've seen in the mobility on the tilt down functions. I'm very excited about this. I hope this is a harbinger for things to come. Along with that improvement, it is an upgraded LCD screen as well. Kind of long overdue. I think it is the one that is in the Sony A7R IV A. So I guess it's not a brand new LCD screen, or at least I believe it isn't, but it is going to be an improvement over pretty much all the different models that Sony has to offer. They also give you that 9.44 million dot EVF, which is absolutely beautiful. I looked through it on my Sony A7S III. It is also in the Alpha 1. It's an incredible EVF, and it's the reason I haven't sold the A7S III to get the FX3. But speaking of the FX3, I kind of got a bone to pick with Sony right now. They put in the new menu type for video into this camera, something that they recently put in the FX3. It is a little bit more a cinema-focused version of the video menu. I am very bothered that this is not in the Sony Alpha 1 or their quote-unquote other flagship mirrorless style A7S III. This also gets the focus breathing compensation and all the different amazing autofocusing capabilities in the video as well. So Sony's still doing their weird segmentations of their cameras. Now moving over to what I would consider a downside of this camera, and it's not necessarily something that I thought that they would improve upon, but I think it's something that they should absolutely improve upon, is this dual type A to SD card slot. To me, I understand where people are coming from and saying, oh great, I get to keep my SD card to do a lot of different things, and the V90 cards are much cheaper, and that's great, but they're not that much cheaper for that type of card when it comes to the type B CF Express type cards. They're very close when you actually look at the storage capacity and price, and you can get some very fast, very high storage CF Express type B cards, especially when you contrast it with the type A cards, which are extremely expensive and overpriced. I really think this is kind of like what Canon is doing with their lenses, where they're blocking all third parties. In a way, this is Sony's version of doing that. Maybe not quite as egregious, but I do think this will hold them back in the future from even better specs. And speaking of specs, this is a stills camera first, and they do have some pretty great upgrades in that department, at least when it comes to the IBIS. This is now an 8 stops of IBIS, and from what I've seen, it works fairly well. And this also has 8 stops, not including the lens. I mean, it's just 8 stops whether or not you have a IBIS focusing lens or not. So it seems like it's working really well. I've seen some really good handheld shots, not only in stills, but in video. This does not have the weird wobbling problems that I've seen with Canon, who do the 8 stops as well, but it doesn't look like it's gonna be a huge upgrade in video when it comes to like a vlogging style camera. But I don't consider this a video-centric camera in general. It does shoot 8K up to 25 frames per second, and the overheating doesn't seem to be a big issue from what I've seen. There is no record limits in this camera, so those previous rumors saying that it was going to have a 30-minute record limit in 8K, it does not have that. They're just saying that up to 30 minutes of 8K recording without overheating is at least what they're advertising. From what I've seen from the other reviewers, they seem to be getting quite a bit more than 30 minutes out of it, obviously depending on the condition that you're shooting it in. Now going back to stills, because this is a stills camera first, you can shoot up to 10 frames per second, but I will say that it's 10 frames per second only in compressed RAW files, and this isn't even in lossless compressed RAW files. When you do that type of thing, it goes down to like the 6 or 7 if you want to do like uncompressed RAW. So this is a big disappointment, especially when you compare it to even the R5, which is priced identical to this at $38.99. You can get up to 20 frames per second electronic or 12 frames per second mechanical, and I think you can do that at even, I don't know if it's completely uncompressed, but it's still 12 frames per second, which is great. That is, I guess, where the crux of the issue comes down to. I think this is a great camera if, say, you're in the Sony atmosphere and you want a high resolution camera and you can't afford an A1, well, this is probably your best option if you want the new bells and whistles. But you could also save some money and probably get a used A7R IV for a pretty great price. So I don't know, there's some back and forth there that you need to make that decision for yourself. But that being said, if you are someone who's trying to choose between systems, say between Sony and Canon, or maybe you do like a dual system scenario, or you're just rich and do everything, I don't know. I think there is a big argument to be made for the Canon R5 still at this point. No, it is not as high as, say, 61 megapixel sensor, but it is a 45 megapixel sensor, which is still fairly high. And it's way better at the hybrid scenario in my mind with the firmware that has came out over the last 2 years of the R5. It really doesn't overheat in any substantial way from what I've seen. It's probably very similar to what you're going to get out of the Sony A7R V. So I don't know. That is a question to have. I definitely think it is a better hybrid camera, and it is the exact same cost at $38.99. You do get better lens options and then cheaper lens options with the Sony, but you get better CF Express Type B card options with the Canon.
Televised debate between a giant douche and a turd sandwich.
If you want to step up a bit and go to the Nikon Z9 and you're looking for that, I mean, I'd say that's maybe the best camera on the market at this point. So anyways, this video has gotten fairly long, and those are my opinions on the camera. Drop in the comment section below and give me your opinions on the camera. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you going to get this camera? Are you excited about it? I will have an affiliate link down below on Amazon. Not sure if it's going to be active, but if it is, maybe try to buy it there. It really helps out the channel. If you've liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And until next time, peace.